Hello, everybody. Before I wait too long, in case for the people who probably are going to catch the recording, I don't want to have like just 5 minutes of silence. So I'm just going to say hi now. And, I don't start the presentation until 5 minutes after the top of the hour. So just chillax and, we'll see how the presentation goes in 5 minutes, 4 minutes now. So, yeah. Oh, and also, if anyone's going to be catching the recording and you don't want to wait 5 minutes, just skip to 5 minutes in, and you should be good. But also, if anybody is watching, like the live, feel free to drop a chat, like drop something in the chat. I apologize for my sniffles. The weather was like in the 70s yesterday, and then it was in the 30s today. So, yeah, everybody's basically getting sick now. All right, we are approaching the 5 minute mark. So, we'll give it a second. I'm a stickler about waiting until I see 5:05. Yes, I am in the central time zone, people. Yeah, it's a struggle. Anyways, 5:05, awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get this started right. Okay. Anyways, so hello everyone and welcome to the 6th episode of Inside the Criminal Mind, where I review specific episodes of Criminal Minds, and I break down the criminal behavior, kind of talk about it a little bit, and explain how this behavior could be potentially prevented. However, I've recently kind of changed things up a bit, solely because I have sometimes, and I noticed that in some of these episodes, we don't really have that clear of like a background or history on some of the criminals. So I feel that it's really necessary that I kind of take a different perspective in some episodes. I think that it's really important that, sorry, my brain. I think that it's really important sometimes that we shift to the victim perspective. So in some cases, I will be only talking about like victim background and how things can potentially affect victims. And only in certain cases, in certain episodes, whenever we actually do have a thorough, decent enough background to really explore what could have happened and how we could have prevented such criminal behavior, then I will discuss that. However, just like in this episode that I'm going to be reviewing today, I can't guarantee that that's going to happen. Like, I can't guarantee that I'm going to go over the criminal. In some cases, like this one, I'm going to be going over the victim. But I will be discussing the criminal. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's inside the criminal mind. But whenever we're talking about prevention and such, it might be in the victim perspective. Okay. As always, we'll follow this format along with the presentation. I'll introduce myself and my journey first, and then a synopsis of the episode, probably relevant theories, criminal prevention, and finally a conclusion and Q&A if needed. Let me just take 1 second. Okay, I just had to make sure that nobody was in the chat. It's always crickets, it's okay. Anyways, so as we all know, I'm Sharissa. I'm a eradication writer on Instagram. I'm a eradication lady on Twitter. Feel free to follow me on either of those platforms. If you know me on Discord, then you know me on Discord. I don't share that. So anyways, I've had my own mental health journey, which I finally came to a full understanding. And whenever I say full understanding of my mental health, I don't mean like, oh, I've mastered my mental health and everything's perfectly fine and dandy. That's never the case. Mental health is an ongoing practice. You can't just go to a therapist for 6 weeks and then automatically never have to go back to the therapist again. That's not how that works. Therapy and other practices of mental health are supposed to be ongoing practices that you can continuously use to keep yourself stable and on track and making sure that your mental health needs are being met. So for me, though, I came from a family or a background that didn't necessarily place mental health as the top priority. It wasn't really that important the way that I grew up. If you're sad, then stop being sad. If you're mad, don't be mad. If you're happy, great. But I've used my journey to re-inspire my passion of psychology. Now I'm getting my master's in psychology. I'm actually finishing my master's degree this summer. And then I'll be going over into getting my doctoral degree with psychology, but with a specialization in criminology and justice studies. So I'm really super excited about that. But because of my own journey, it motivated me to work towards destigmatizing important conversations surrounding mental health, psychological principles, human rights, and how they all work together, and how psychological principles can actually be confined or defined. They can be defined and utilized in society and even in legislation, and we can actually solve some of these problems that we're seeing in society today. So I'm super mega passionate about these types of things and making sure that we can have a better future for not only our children, but for the elder millennials, the younger millennials, and Gen Z. We have to think about all of these future generations that have to work and live and grow up and develop in some pretty disturbing times that we're not really sure about what the future holds for us. So I think that it's really important that we have these conversations as long as we can and really show how some of these things could be prevented. And all it takes is just a little bit of education in psychology and psychological principles. So why this series? This series is a great tool to expand our perspectives regarding societal issues while providing examples of multiple different cases. And like I said, this show is also a really good example of also seeing the victim perspective. As we saw in the last episode, by the way, I will discuss my absence last week, trust me. In the last episode, when we were talking about Agent Morgan and his loss with, not loss, but in the whole journey of how his baby mama, I believe they were married, his wife got shot and she was pregnant with the child. And there was a lot of unknowns in that episode. There was a lot of possible incidences of PTSD that could have definitely fueled the anger and the decision making that we saw in that episode. So it's really important that the show has these examples and that I can utilize these examples to help shift those perspectives and kind of help people see things from different points of view instead of just, oh, this is a fictional story that never happened. But the thing is that majority of these stories are actually based on real life situations. So, moving on. Okay, where am I? Sorry, guys. All right. The synopsis. Okay, so this episode was another continuation of the previous episode, which covered Agent Emily Prentiss and her background before she entered the BAU. She did a lot of deep cover work. Anyone who doesn't know what deep cover work, it's basically being undercover. You know, you're actually a cop, but you're like so into character that you put yourself into these situations and you are going to work with the bad guys to see how they work and how you can gather more intel, etc., etc. So, she did a lot of deep cover work for the UK and surrounding areas before she entered the BAU, meaning that she had made a few enemies in her time. An ex-lover from the time that she was involved in some deep cover work had come back to target families, and she realized that put a target on her team. Conflicted with guilt, she fled from her job as an agent in an attempt to take matters into her own hands. What a common theme. In the last episode, Agent Morgan did the exact same thing, right? She is successful at finding her target, however, some death takes place along the way, forcing a semi-dark end to the story, really to the episode. But, you know, obviously we'll talk about that. So, let's get into the mushy-gushy of everything. So, we have probable relevant theories. They're not really probable. I mean, they were stated within the episode, and I'm also not going to go into complete detail anymore of, you know, like narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy. I'm not going to get all into it anymore, but I'm sure if you guys are interested in knowing how I look at narcissistic personality disorder and how I look at psychopathy, there's actually a couple of episodes before that mention criminals with psychopathy and narcissistic personality disorder. So if you're confused about either one of those, please feel free to go back and watch those other videos. It's one of the other past 5 videos. Anyways, one of the first people that we see that Emily Prentiss meets, and I'm not even reading my notes anymore. Let's start with the 2 of the bad guys. One of the first guys that we see Emily Prentiss meet is Nick Fahey in a flashback with Lauren Reynolds. Lauren Reynolds is the deep cover name of Emily Prentiss as she was working with the UK. He introduces her to Ian Doyle, which is a former IRA captain and psychopath. We learn that Jack Fahey is a narcissist with a nicotine addiction, which is how they begin to gather some information on the potential whereabouts of Lauren by bribing him with a cigarette on the roof of the building. However, Lauren is being held hostage by Ian Doyle, and he forces her into her Lauren persona and made her choose to kill somebody because they had a sniper where Nick Fahey and 2 of her team agents were standing to try to get some information out of Nick Fahey, and they gave her an ultimatum that they either shoot one of the BAU members or who's going to get shot. And that forced Emily or Lauren to choose Nick Fahey, because, or not Nick, why do I keep saying Nick? Jack Fahey, because if he's able to tell them more information about her whereabouts, then that means that they're going to end up finding Nick and his squad. So she's like, kill him, because then my team won't have anywhere to go from this point. So she chooses to kill Fahey, knowing that he has the information to help her team find her. She did this knowing that it would buy her some immunity with Doyle, because after she made that decision, he was like, welcome back, Lauren. And then, like, I think he kissed her, or like, felt really close to her, I don't really remember exactly. My brain has a tendency to jumble things up. Before I move on from Fahey, though, I wanted to highlight some of his behaviors. Knowing that he's a narcissist assisted the BAU in being able to manipulate information out of him, especially with his nicotine addiction. For some reason in my notes I wrote information, but thankfully I knew better. Anyways, knowing that he's a narcissist, we know that narcissists have a great sense of self-grandiosity. And that's something that was very apparent about Jack Fahey. Why do I keep calling him Nick? Jack Fahey. I have his name in front of me, okay? And like, for some reason I keep saying Nick. Anyways, yeah, but knowing that he kept inflating his self-ego, he kept being like really grand gestured about the things that he knew and his standing within the mob, and even making really hypersexualized comments to one of the female agents. However, he didn't last long. He was shot on the roof, and here we are. Now, Ian Doyle was a former captain of the IRA, and if you are not sure what the IRA, no, we are not talking about your retirement fund or a certain type of retirement fund. We are talking about the Irish mob. So clearly there has to be some sort of mental instability, and I probably shouldn't have said it like that, because just because you're a part of the mob doesn't necessarily mean that you are unstable. What we already know, though, is he matches the description of a psychopath, as he is ready and willing to commit murder for absolutely no real reason, and so on. We don't really need to go through that checklist again. However, I'm kind of curious, but we do know, like, obviously, if you're in the mob, you have been committing crimes for a while. You do things back to back generally. And you're used to that. You're used to that type of chaos in a sense, and you like to have that power. Usually psychopathy, whenever we look at past psychopaths in history, we think of like Ted Bundy. And then also Ted Bundy was probably very likely a narcissist if we think about it. And psychopathy and narcissism is just kind of one of those like deadly characteristics. So anyways, addiction, as we know, can create some weak spots in our judgment. We're kind of shifting over to the theories and relevant ideas. Addiction, as we know, can create some weak spots in our judgment. That can be seen with Fahey before he was shot, not being able to function unless he has a nicotine fix, and that led him to having to be moved to the roof of the BAU building where snipers had a clean and easy shot. His narcissistic behavior led him to being read very easily by the FBI profilers. Ian Doyle suffers from psychopathy, leading us to believe he's just as dangerous, if not more, due to the mob experience. Okay. So, really, whenever we're thinking about this, there's a lot that goes into it. And like I said, these were only like the two main guys that we saw within this episode of, I didn't even introduce the episode, I just realized. This is episode 6, by the way. Episode 6, season 6, episode 18 that we are going over. Anyways. So yeah, addiction and other substance abuses, we know that they can really cloud our judgment. It can make it to where it's harder to function and make clear, more responsible decisions. narcissistic personality disorder, you have such an inflated self-ego that you believe that you are right and that nobody else is, and that so many people have done you wrong, but you've done nothing to deserve this horrible treatment from other people. Psychopathy, obviously, there's things that you do that are actually not good behaviors, especially if you're a compulsive liar. And that's something that we can see with psychopathy. So, criminal victim prevention, like I said, this is one of those episodes where we're not going to really have any criminal type of prevention because we really don't know anything about Ian Doyle before his adulthood. We also didn't really know anything about Jack Fahey either. So we're going to take this as a chance to discuss Emily Prentiss and what happened. She's possibly deceased. They basically led everybody to believe that she never made it off the table, but we're going to go into that. So we're not going to discuss criminal prevention here because there's so much unknown in that aspect. So we're going to look into how this affects Emily Prentiss and how did this episode end. So after she was rescued, Ian Doyle escaped, leaving Prentiss impaled. So when he escaped, he left her on the ground, basically to die if they didn't find her, but of course they found her. Agent Morgan recovers her. The scene ends. The following scene takes place at the hospital where JJ announces that Emily never made it off of the table, implying that she died during surgery. But in an ending scene, we see JJ meet with someone in Paris to deliver some papers. She wishes them luck and then leaves. Again, another implication that Prentiss is still alive, just hiding from Doyle, for obvious reasons. When you're messing with the mob, they're going to find you and they're going to take care of you. So it only makes sense to fake your death and move on. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me to think about having to go so deep undercover at one point in your life, getting out of that cover, and taking a job miles away, like thousands of miles across the ocean, basically in an equally dangerous situation. I mean, whenever we're dealing with international crime, the sky's the limit if you think about it. And so it's kind of crazy to know that she made this decision to get involved again. And I think she did it knowing that she might die. However, obviously, as we know, she didn't. And I mean, we know that she comes back after season 6. So I believe she comes back in season 7. But either way, I mean, who wouldn't do that? I wouldn't. I mean, I would. Anyway, so let's look at the conclusion, you guys. Dangerous jobs. This is basically the same thing as the last slide in the last episode. Dangerous jobs equals dangerous risks to loved ones. But not even just to loved ones, also to yourself. And I think it's kind of implied that we accept that whenever we're putting ourselves into that situation, we know what to expect. We know what could potentially happen to us. But dangerous jobs equals dangerous risks to yourself and your loved ones. Also, don't rush healing from a traumatic experience. I think in this sense, I don't remember how long ago it was whenever Emily Prentiss was undercover. I don't think they actually specified that. But you know, that could have been traumatic, and that's probably why she ended up leaving the UK's intelligence stuff and moved over to America's and decided to join the BAU under the FBI in America. So, don't rush. Whenever you're going through healing experiences, it's very normal to encounter really quick burnout. And if you push yourself way too hard to get back into the routine, then you're not going to function. You're not going to function comfortably. It's going to feel like you can't do anything right. Now, that's not saying that you are not doing everything right, but it might feel like that. So, this is a perfect segue for me to explain where I was last week. So, last week, well, not really last week, let me see. On February 12th, I experienced a traumatic situation. I'm not going to go into detail about it just because there are some legal matters that I am handling about it. But I encountered some trauma, some physical and mental trauma. And that week of the 12th was really hard. Like, it was really difficult to get through. I gave myself a lot of time off. I mean, I gave myself a week and a half off. And to me, that's a lot of time because I have tasks that usually get done every single day. And last week, I was just not able to function well enough to be able to get any tasks done on the daily. And I think a lot of people really just don't consider the weight and the gravity of how important it is that you take the healing process seriously, and that you're not forcing yourself too hard, because whenever you force yourself too hard, people can get hurt, including yourself. So, it's just, yeah, that's why I wasn't live last Thursday. And I know nobody probably really cares that much, but I like to be able to explain to people that it wasn't just me leaving anybody high and dry. I just really needed to take some time to take care of myself, because self-care is the best care. So, at this time, I'm taking questions, comments, and suggestions. However, it says that I don't have any viewers at the moment, so I'm just going to assume that nobody has any questions or comments or suggestions. But I do want to thank everybody for hanging in there and supporting me and subscribing to the channel. And if you would like to be notified for my live sessions, please hit the little bell on the page. And I do these every Thursday. There will be 6 more episodes coming out with Inside the Criminal Mind, and then I'll be working on a few other projects for the channel. So again, I just really wanted to thank everybody for being here and for subscribing and for following me and for sharing my videos and for viewing them. You guys, it is so much more appreciated than you'll ever know. I'll see you guys